The rain had not stopped since morning, and Mama Comfort stood outside the gate of the house she had built with her own hands, holding a black nylon bag with everything she now owned in this world. Her wrapper was soaked through, her slippers were caked in mud from the road. Behind her, the gate she had opened for 30 years to welcome her children home was now shut, locked from the inside by the same children she had raised. Through the window, she could see her son Emeka standing in the parlor, arms folded, refusing to look at her. Beside him stood his wife Ngozi, arms crossed too, her face hard as stone. Mama Comfort knocked once, twice. On the third knock, Emeka's voice came from inside, flat and cold. Mama, there is nothing more to discuss. This house is no longer yours. She stood there a long moment, rain mixing with the tears sliding down her face, and then she turned and walked into the darkness of the street, an old woman with nowhere to go, carrying a secret in that nylon bag that would one day bring her children to their knees. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications to support our mission of bringing you powerful and inspiring stories. Now, let's begin. 25 years before that rainy night, Comfort Adeyemi was a young widow selling roasted corn by the roadside in Ibadan, with two small children clinging to her wrapper and a third one strapped to her back. Her husband had died in a motor accident, leaving her with nothing but debts and two hands that refused to stay idle. She sold corn in the morning, cleaned offices in the evening, and at night she sewed clothes for neighbors who could pay her only in promises. People pitied her then. Some mocked her quietly, saying a widow with 3 children would never rise above the dust of that roadside. But Comfort had a saying she repeated to herself every single night before sleep took her. God is not through with me yet. Slowly, painfully, she built something. The corn business became a small provisions shop. The provisions shop became 2 shops. By the time her last child, Emeka, was finishing secondary school, Comfort owned a modest block of 4 flats in a quiet part of the city, built brick by brick from years of sacrifice, hunger, and prayer. She never told her children exactly how much she had suffered to give them what they had. She only told them one thing, again and again, until it became almost a joke among them. Everything I have belongs to all of you, but respect must come before inheritance. Her eldest daughter, Adaeze, would laugh whenever she said it. Her second son, Chidi, would nod politely and go back to his phone. But Emeka, her last born, the one she loved most fiercely because he reminded her of his late father, would simply smile and say, "Mama, we know you've told us 100 times." None of them imagined, back then, how those words would one day decide their future. The years moved quickly after that. Adaeze married a banker and relocated to Lagos. Chidi finished university and started a small logistics business with money Comfort quietly gave him, though she never told anyone the exact amount. Emeka, her last born, married a young woman named Ngozi, a beautiful, sharp-tongued girl who worked as an account officer at a new bank branch in the city. At first, Ngozi was polite to Comfort. She called her mama with a warm smile and brought her food on Sundays. But as Emeka's business began to grow, something in Ngozi began to shift. She started asking questions that sounded innocent at first. "Mama, this compound is so big. Why don't you let us renovate it and modernize things?" Comfort would smile and say nothing, because she understood something Ngozi did not yet know. The land, the flats, everything on that compound was still fully in her name, not her son's. She had worked too hard to lose control of it so easily, even to family. One evening, Emeka came to her room looking troubled, his hands rubbing together the way his late father used to do when something weighed on him. "Mama, Ngozi has been asking why the property is not yet transferred to my name. She says it's not right that your own son should be treated like a stranger in his father's compound." Comfort looked at her son for a long moment before she answered, her voice calm but firm. Emeka, this compound is not just for you. It is for all three of you, equally, and there is a reason I have not signed anything yet. She did not tell him the full reason that night. But somewhere in a locked drawer in her room, a document already existed, one that would change everything the children thought they knew about their mother's plans. Months passed, and Comfort's health began to slip. She grew tired more easily, her legs swelled by evening, and one Sunday after church, she collapsed quietly in her room. It was Ngozi who found her on the floor, and it was Ngozi who called Emeka, shouting into the phone that Mama was not breathing well. At the hospital, the doctor said her heart was weak and that she needed rest, proper care, and constant attention. That single sentence changed the atmosphere in the family completely. Suddenly, Ngozi was the most attentive daughter-in-law in the world. She moved into Comfort's room to nurse her, bringing her tea every morning and sitting beside her bed with a notebook, writing down her blood pressure numbers like a devoted nurse. Comfort was grateful, but something about the sudden attention felt heavier than kindness. It felt like she was being watched. One night, she woke up to find Ngozi standing by the old wooden drawer where Comfort kept her important papers, her hand resting lightly on the wood. Mama, I was just checking if you needed anything, Ngozi said quickly, stepping back. Comfort said nothing, but from that night, she began to lock that drawer with a small padlock she hid in her wrapper. Weeks later, at a family dinner, Chidi brought up something that made the room go silent. He said a lawyer friend of his had mentioned that many elderly parents in Nigeria lose their property when children rush paperwork through while a parent is sick and confused. Ngozi's smile flickered for just a second before returning to its usual warmth. Why would anyone think that way about family? She asked softly. But Comfort, lying weak on the bed, had already begun to notice something. The gentle hands caring for her were the same hands quietly asking, again and again, when the property papers would finally be signed. By the time Comfort was strong enough to sit up and walk short distances, the mood in that house had changed completely. The gentle attention she once received had hardened into something colder, something she could feel in the silences at the dinner table. One afternoon, Emeka sat beside her bed, his face tired in a way that broke her heart, and told her that business was struggling, that a big contract had fallen through, and that the bank was threatening to seize his office equipment. Mama, if I had the compound in my name, I could use it as collateral. It would save everything, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Comfort held his hand and told him she understood his pain, but that the compound was not his alone to pledge. She reminded him gently that his siblings had a stake in it too, and that rushing such a decision while she was still unwell was not wise. That night, she overheard voices from the sitting room, low but sharp. It was Ngozi's voice, tight with frustration. She keeps saying it's for all three of them, but we are the ones taking care of her. Adaeze is in Lagos living her life. Chidi barely calls. Why should we suffer while others inherit? Emeka's reply was quiet, almost pleading. She is still my mother, Ngozi. I can't force her. Then maybe, Ngozi said, her voice dropping even lower, it's time she understood that a person who cannot manage her own affairs peacefully should not be managing property either. Comfort lay still in the darkness, her heart pounding, understanding for the first time that the danger in that house was not her weak heart. It was the people counting on it to fail. The next morning, Comfort quietly called her lawyer, a calm, careful man named Barrister Fashola, who had handled her affairs for over a decade. She asked him to visit her at the house, and when he came, she gave him instructions no one else in that home would learn of until it was time. 2 weeks later, the storm finally broke. Ngozi convinced Emeka that his mother's confusion and forgetfulness were signs she could no longer be trusted to manage the compound, and that keeping her there was becoming too much for their young family. On that rainy evening, Emeka stood before his mother, avoiding her eyes, and told her it would be better if she stayed with a distant relative for a while to rest properly. Comfort understood immediately what was truly happening. She packed the little she was allowed to carry, walked out into the rain, and stood outside the gate she herself had built, locked out of her own life by the son she loved most. She did not go to a distant relative. She went straight to Adaeze in Lagos, and from there to Barrister Fashola's office, where the real document from that locked drawer was finally brought into the light. 3 months later, the family gathered for the reading of Comfort's will, believing it would finally hand them everything. Instead, they learned the compound had been legally signed over into a family trust years earlier, one that released ownership only to whichever child had genuinely cared for her, verified through the lawyer's private visits and notes, not through empty declarations at a dinner table. Emeka broke down in tears that day, not for the property he lost, but for the mother he had allowed himself to throw away. Comfort's lesson to her children and to everyone watching was simple. Respect your parents while they are still with you, because true inheritance is never just property. It is the honor you protect long before anyone reads a will. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories like this one.